So before the break, we were speaking with Smokey Thomas. He's the president of OPSU, one of the biggest unions in Ontario, if not the biggest. We know unions are going to play a huge role in this provincial election. They're spending millions on attack ads telling all of you that Tim Hudak is the evil entity of this. But that's what you're hearing from the leadership, and not necessarily from Smokey, because Smokey is actually a pretty reasonable fella. But what are you hearing from the average worker? A lot of times union folk, they don't speak out because they don't want to talk differently from their brothers, or else they find themselves on the getting attacked. Except for our next guest. Paul Burling joins us now. You are a retired member of the Canadian Auto Workers.
Correct.
You've been 33 years in the public sector unions.
Yep.
And now you're blogging.
Yep.
I got your blogs because they were sent to me from a viewer who said, have you read this guy? And when I started reading your blogs, I was really shocked to see your position. You are not, and I don't think you're an average union member, or are you?
Actually, I think I am. I represent more the worker on the line than the actual the heads of the unions of the national. Most of the people on the line, they're worried about electricity rates, they're worried about taxes, they're worried about scandals with spending. And the union just kind of seems to fluff it all off and support Kathleen Wynne, and I don't understand it.
And so why, okay, take me back to your history. You worked 33 years on the lines, so
Yeah.
that's where your back was. I mean, have you always been voting for one particular party that?
No, I've voted NDP, Liberal, and Conservative, or PC in Ontario. I made the mistake of voting for Bob Rae, which I'm afraid to, I probably shouldn't say that on TV, but I voted Liberal, I voted for Jean Chrétien, twice.
Okay,
You know.
and so how do you get to your positions? Because clearly you're not loyal to any one party member. You obviously take a long look at what they have to say and do. But as a union member, were you willing to vote even if it meant it wasn't good for you as a union person?
No, I'd always vote what's in my best interest, or my family's interest. And that's the way you should be doing it. You should be basing it on what your beliefs are, not what a union rep is telling you to who you should vote for. The attack ads from the Working Families Coalition, I take great offense that they take union dues from workers and do attack ads against Tim Hudak, and you don't get any say in it.
But do most, and this was something that Tim Hudak, you know, if he did his workers' right legislation, I mean, it would have given that kind of transparency. Now, he chose not to run on that because it would have been controversial, I think. I think a lot of people in the private sector would have been happy to see that, or his base. But the bottom line is, do union workers today in the public sector unions, do they understand that these multi-million-dollar ad campaigns come out of their pocket?
Oh, they do now, yeah. And some people don't. You need to get the word out, which is one of the reasons for the blog, is to get the average, auto workers' voice out, let people know what's actually going on with the union, what they're doing with your money. And
so you're blogging, I mean, the kinds of things you're blogging, you're basically going on the attack to those who attack. You've taken on all sorts of people, whether it's Kathleen Wynne, Andrea Horwath, Linda McQuaig. You basically call them on their nonsense.
Well, I mean, it's easy to call them on it. You hit Google, and 30 seconds later, you've already proven that they're lying through their teeth. Kathleen Wynne stood up in Walkerton complaining about blaming deaths for Mike Harris cutbacks, and she cut 25% of the budget for the next 10 years from their Walkerton Clean Water Center. Like, how hypocritical is that?
Well, not to mention, she forgot to mention the two workers, the brothers who were drinking on the job and falsifying reports.
Well, exactly.
Played a massive role.
Yeah, I think, and if you look at Walkerton right now, the MPP for Walkerton is actually a PC MPP. So the people in Walkerton understand what went on. I think Kathleen Wynne's photo op there, which was pathetic in my opinion, was more directed at the people outside of Walkerton. It was for the Toronto base to secure the votes there.
Right. So what are you looking at, I guess, as the overall picture right now? What are you hearing from the membership? Sid Ryan is out on a full-out campaign across Ontario trying to tell the membership to get out, and I would assume, I don't know this for fact, but I assume that they're saying vote Wynne. He openly said that he wants this budget passed. He likes it and approves of it. Smokey has told me that he will have his membership vote how they feel. Yeah. He doesn't love all the budget. He likes parts of it.
Yeah, see, I had the pleasure of meeting Smokey before we came on there, and a great guy, and he seems very balanced. Sid Ryan, I got into a little Twitter war with him yesterday. He's blaming Mike Harris and Tim Hudak for the high cost of electricity. I told him to Google the Green Energy Act. He came back and said, well, only 5% of green energy goes towards the grid, right? Well, 40% of the cost on your hydro bill is because of green energy. Do the math. It's not that hard.
And so, as an outsider, because now you're working in the private sector, you've come out of retirement, you're working part-time in the private sector, what are you telling membership? Because I would have to think they don't like that you speak out against.
It depends who you talk to. A lot of people on the line are in the same position I am. I mean, I've got a 94-year-old mother living by herself in her house still, and she's got to worry about her electricity bill. Why would she have to do that at this point in her life? It doesn't make any sense. You see, Stephen Harper, the Canada Post, decides they're going to cancel door-to-door delivery. The media jumps all over it. You don't hear the media complaining, you know, what about the seniors in Ontario that are struggling to meet their electricity bills? They're cutting back on food. They're cutting back on the essentials of what they need just because of the Liberals' incompetence on energy.
Right, and so what do you look at as the big issue in this election? What are you urging? I mean, because obviously you put the blog out for a reason.
Right.
You want to inform average workers like yourself that the leadership maybe aren't telling you the whole truth, or maybe different
Well, they're
views.
twisting it to what they want you to believe, I think, is it's the nicest way to put it. You know, I think jobs is a huge issue, which is Tim Hudak's correct to be on that. And I think electricity costs and taxes and just the wasted spending. Over $2 billion just in Orange and the gas plant scandal alone. What could you do with $2 billion?
Yeah, I mean, well, all the teachers would have those raises that they demand, I think that they should have. We'd have MRIs, we would have more beds,
Exactly.
we would have, you know, programs put in place. Lord knows we could get rid of that all-day kindergarten, but that's not going anywhere. But there's been so much mismanagement and waste and corruption with this government.
Exactly.
I don't know personally how anybody can support them, but you know that they will in the unions because they have to. They're protecting
the way I look at it, it doesn't matter what Kathleen Wynne offers promises for the future. All you have to do is look back at the last 11 years, and that's what you're going to get for the next 4 years if she's reelected.
Okay, I think most people, or most, I think in our viewing audience, will assume unions are they're going to vote no matter what for the public sector. Is that true?
I don't think so. I think some of them will. I mean, the ones that are worried about their jobs being cut, even though they're being done by attrition, something that Kathleen Wynne never seems to mention in any of her photo ops. You know, if you're worried about your job, you probably would vote NDP or Liberal. But I think the reason that they're in this position right now is because of the incompetence of the Liberals. I mean, if we had a balanced budget and Tim Hudak was a premier, he would probably give them the 2%, you know, a cost of living raise every year. You could do that. You could afford to do that. When you're paying $11 billion just for interest on your debt, and you're still adding more debt onto that, you're never going to win.
Okay, so what are you then telling people about the three candidates of what you're seeing in this election? We're still very early into this election. I think the next 3 weeks will be telling you. But what are you telling them as far as information?
Well, the way I see it, Tim Hudak's, I think he's run the best campaign so far. He's got his message out and he's made the election about him. I think he needs to work a little more on the details of, he gets his message out, but he's short on some of the details, like the 100,000 job cuts would be through attrition, which is very important because those people that are leaving will be getting their government pension, which we've already paid for. So you're not going to lay off 100,000 people and take their money out of the economy. They're still going to be getting their pensions. They're still going to be spending. They're still going to be spending money on the economy. And you're going to save that $100,000, 100,000 workers, you're going to save their payroll. That's going to come right off the government expenditures every year.
Where do you think he's going wrong in this campaign? Just with the messaging?
I think he's doing it. I think just the messaging could be a little clearer. I think when he first came out and he brought out the 100,000 job cuts, he stated it was going to be through attrition over about 4 years or whatever. And if you look at how many public sector workers retire on a yearly basis, it shouldn't be that hard to achieve that. But he kind of just skips over it, and you hear him say, we're going to cut 100,000 jobs, we're going to cut 100,000 jobs. He never says, we're going to cut 100,000 jobs through attrition. That makes a big difference.
He did come in with, and I forced him on the detail because I wanted to know specifically, you know, because I know that the opposition and the media will spin it however they want to spin it. So
and that's exactly what they're doing, and that's where he has to be more definitive on what he's stating.
All right, so you know his platform. We already know the platform Kathleen Wynne is running. I keep calling her Premier. Kathleen Wynne is running on her budget. Where is she going right and where is she going wrong?
I can't really think of anything where she's going right. I mean, I watch her photo ops every day, and it's like Groundhog Day. The first thing she starts off every day is saying what's wrong with what Tim Hudak said the day before. I mean, she's going to make cuts. There's cuts in the budget, but nobody's asking her, what are you going to cut? What jobs are you going to cut? What spending are you going to cut?
Well, she hasn't said any of that.
She won't, and nobody asks her, and that's one of the problems. I mean, if you look at what happened now there's a big kerfuffle with Doug Ford about the house with the autistic children.
Yeah.
And what's going on with that? Well, the reason that house is there, where those kids are there, is because of the Liberals closed Thistletown, the center for them, 43-acre center for kids with autism.
Right, and this is a house that houses...
And this is a house right in a subdivision with people.
And they're complaining to... Look, he's doing what he's supposed to as a councillor, which is represent his members,
exactly.
whether it's the population.
And I actually had a house years ago. I bought a house, and it turned out the house next door, when they moved in, it was a house for autistic adults. And yes, you did hear a lot of noise coming from the house and banging, and when they finally did move out, the house was basically had to be gutted on the inside.
Okay, I don't want to get side railed by communal issues. What about Andrea Horvath?
I haven't really seen a whole lot of her. She's almost seems invisible so far.
But the reality is, I think most unions are going to support one or the other. And so how do you see it playing out?
The funny thing I find with Andrea Horvath, if you watch her now, she seems to be taking some things from Tim Hudak's platform, like small business tax cuts, lowering the size of cabinet. The way I see it is she's almost setting herself up. If Tim Hudak wins a minority government, she's going to be able to come across and say, well, he's got enough stuff in the budget. I think I can support it, at least for the first go-round for the year. I voted NDP before. I think a lot of union members used to vote NDP, and they got turned off by what happened during Bob Rae's years.
Right, and I think a lot of people...
Which was probably one of the biggest tax on public sector workers with Rae days and everything else.
And before I let you go, do you get a sense that enough people in the public sector unions are willing to look past the corruption just to get what they need? I
think there's a lot more outrage over the corruption in the public sector than what the heads of the unions actually let on to believe. I think especially the gas plant. The other thing, I mean, you look at the young girl, Maddie Vanstone.
Yeah.
She needs $60,000 a year for her medication, which will
that, yeah.
basically extend her life for who knows how long. Kathleen Wynne won't pay for it, but they can give a Liberal insider a $456 million contract, $66,000 a day.
Yeah.
His company makes under a contract, and she can't pay $60,000 for 1 year for that young girl's medication. It's pathetic.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, so how do people read you? paulsstuff.blogspot.ca?
Actually, the easiest way to get to me is go to bloggingtories.ca.
bloggingtories.ca.
And on the left-hand side, you'll see the names of all the blogs on there.
All right,
I'm usually up around the top.
You're a voice of reason.
Well, thank you.
Refreshing.